black patriarch.
Michael Joseph Jackson was born in 1958 in Gary, Indiana, to parents Joseph and Catherine. His father, Joe, a thwarted musician, was determined that one day his talented family would be stars.
We were used to it working hard, and we wanted it real bad.
Michael had a special talent for singing, and in 1968, singer Bobby Taylor got the group an audition at Motown.
I said, listen, I got the act of acts. I said, Keith's here with me, you won't believe it.
Well, actually, we went up to Motown and we did an audition.
They were signed the next morning.
He was just a very professional young child imitating absolutely brilliantly James Brown's moves.
He loved it when he got on stage.
Motown's very first hit was I Want You Back. I didn't realize it was on the radio until it was almost over because I wasn't paying attention. It was a great feeling.
When I had you to myself, I didn't want you around. Those pretty faces always make you stand out in a crowd. But someone to pick you from the front when your hands look all it took. Now when the much too late for me, shake a sailor. Oh, baby, give me one.
The thing about Michael that was so extraordinary was that every song that he sang, it looked like he had lived it, you know. At that age, he was like an old soul.
The group were the label's first boy band, and thanks to the growing teen market, the phenomenon, selling over 100 million records worldwide.
All that happened in the 70s had really laid the foundation, obviously, Motown. Michael, who was a kid who grew up seeing Jackie Wilson, he'd been to the Apollo when it was still really happening as a little boy, knew the Chitlin Circuit. He was really someone who was able to access these traditions of black music, but also make them contemporary, because he was young enough to take them and not, it wasn't replicating what had happened, but extending them. He was the first kind of black teen idol, and the Jacksons were black teen idols the way that the Partridge Family was. But they were bigger and they were better artistically. So I mean, not only were they teen idols and they represented, you know, youthful achievement for us, they also were really, the records hold up like nobody's business. They're incredible records. So for over 10 years or so, more, for so many people who were his peers, you know, and the baby boom people, he was one of the artists that defined our existence. As Michael got pimples, we got pimples. You know, as your man got pimples, we got pimples. As they began dating the Jacksons, that we began dating.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Our friends, the Silvers.
There's a new Harlem thriller, a new way to ruin the ruts, a new dance for jitterbugs. Woo! Blackfoot Fuji with the boy, boy. The Blackfoot Fuji with the boy, boy. The Blackfoot Fuji with the boy, boy. Boy, boy, boy. The Blackfoot Fuji with the plow, plow. The Blackfoot Fuji with the plow, plow. The Blackfoot Fuji with the plow, plow.
Prince Roger Nelson was born in Minneapolis in 1958. His father, a jazz pianist, exposed Prince to music at an early age. And by high school, he had formed his own band, Grand Central, with his school friend Andre Simone. Even during these early years, Prince was drawing attention through his skills as a multi-instrumentalist, playing guitar, bass, drums and piano. He was also a confident vocalist.
In the 70s, the black population here in Minneapolis was minuscule, it's probably 5%. So there wasn't a full-time black radio station for him to grow up listening to. And I think all of that had a lot to do with forming who he was musically, because he was probably listening to a lot of different kinds of music that most black artists weren't listening to as they were coming up, because they were in a more rigidly segregated environment.
The wellspring of black American music was still basically the South, the East Coast, Detroit, you know, the northeastern cities. But here comes this young kid from Minneapolis, and that alone was like people were shaking their heads and said, you know, Minneapolis? I mean, what, you know, how does that work?
During the 70s, you're having a lot of black kids who are moving outside of black neighborhoods. They're moving to the suburbs. They're listening to not just R&B radio, but also rock radio, which is everywhere. And they're sort of getting this dual consciousness. I mean, Hendrix had been this breakthrough guy, and Sly had been this breakthrough guy. And there hadn't been a lot afterwards, and what Prince did was fuse Sly and Hendrix. The thing that really makes it work, of course, is that Prince is a genius musician. And that's the difference, is that we all had these influences, we all listened to these records, but Prince could actually play drums, and play bass, and play keyboards, and play guitar.
I met Prince when I was 12, 13 years old. And, you know, we had our little bands even as kids. We had Grand Central, we had Flight Time. And this is, you know, we're 14, 15-year-old kids, so, you know, and we'd play like in the park and, you know, different little places. And you could tell then that he was special. I saw his first show here. It was a movie theater that we all used to go to as kids called the Capri. And I saw his first show in there after he made it big. I had to be like 79. He took a little bit from everybody that we all grew up listening to and made it into his own thing, and that's what we have today, you know, so. But it started right here in Minneapolis, trust me.
He was sort of what we would call an urban legend in the Minneapolis area. You know, there were these hushed conversations about this, you know, 16-year-old kid who was the next Stevie Wonder and played all these multiple instruments.
By 1976, Prince had abandoned Grand Central and had begun working with Minneapolis studio owner Chris Moon. Despite the strength of some of these tracks, which Prince would later develop in his solo career, they struggled to get noticed until a demo was sent to aspiring manager Owen Husney.
I kind of have a little meter in my brain, and there's a lot of music that sounds like it should be a hit, that it could be a hit, that it's promising, but at the end of the day, it really isn't a hit. Well, the little meter in my mind, after hearing the second song, the meter went like all the way over to the other end of the scale. And I just thought, this group is phenomenal. So I said to Chris, who's the group? This is pretty phenomenal, because the guitar player was great, the drummer was right on, the drummer was working with the bass player to create an incredible rhythm section, and then there was keyboards on top of it, and the vocals were over the top great. And I just said, who's the group? He said, well, I'd like it if you sat down. I said, and I was Mr. Big Shot, back in those days. And I said, I don't sit down. I'm sorry. You tell me who the group is. And he said, well, just sit. I said, no, just tell me who the group is. So he says, well, it's one kid. He's 17. He's playing everything. He wrote everything. And he's singing everything. And I just sat down immediately.
Husney marketed Prince as a prodigy, a young Stevie Wonder, and he managed to gain the interest of several major record labels. By June 1977, Prince had signed to Warner Brothers with a 6-figure contract. Yet although Warner's had big plans for their young signing, Prince quickly made it known that he would remain in sole control of his output.
Warner Brothers came to us and said, oh, we've got a great thing. I think we can get Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire to produce your first album. Isn't that great? And Prince and I walked out of the room and he said, nobody's producing my first album. And I'm like his manager, and already I'm ahead of Prince. I'm thinking, gee, I have to tell one of the biggest record labels in the world that somebody 17 who's never made an album before is going to produce his own album, and that's going to be it.
In 1978, I was 13, and I remember dancing on the dance floor and hearing this track called Soft and Wet. And I ran to the DJ booth, and I was like, who's that girl? Who's that girl you just played? It's not a girl. His name is Prince. He's 17 years old. He's from Minneapolis. And from that moment on, I was insane for him.
Tell us about your encounter with Prince.
Oh, Prince used to call the job all the time because Right On Magazine used to be in California. He would call like 2 and 3 times a day. We would just ignore his calls. We didn't know who he was, never heard of him. So then what happened was, out of desperation, he called and said, can you come to SIR Recording Studios and I will play you some instruments and you will see that I have talent. And after that, I will have to be in the magazine.
Right.
So I got so tired of him calling, I finally said, okay, I'm going down there. I'm going to tell this guy off, tell him he's got to stop calling my job. The people are tired of talking to him. Went down there, he started playing all these different instruments, drums, all these instruments. I was like amazed. I said, you know what? You are the most talented person I've ever met as a musician. So I agreed to put him in the magazine. So we started doing a lot of interviews.
Did he have a perm?
No, he had an afro at the time.
Oh, he had the fro at the time. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Later on, his hair got flattened out more straight.
Oh, right. When he started becoming Prince.
Yeah. So what happened was, I contacted the record company. They were like laughing because I found out he was on Warner Brothers, and they said, "Look, this guy we can get rid of more posters of him than we can sell records. Because he was so new, his music was different. So no one really understood what it was that he was trying to do. So, you know, he had a lot of trouble, but after getting in the magazine, it became a lot easier because he was really gorgeous looking at these green eyes, the big afro. Nobody's seen anyone like him before. And even Michael Jackson would say, "Who is he?"
Really?
Yes.
Michael Jackson said that.
Yeah.
Don't blame it on the moonlight.
I want to show you first of all the album and then show you the inside, if I may, and from left to right. They are Randy and Tito and Jackie and Marlon and Michael, and they are the Jacksons.
And I do know that I want you. Let's dance, let's shout, shake your body down to the ground. Let's dance, let's shout, shake your body down to the ground.
Released in August 1979, the single I Wanna Be Your Lover provided Prince with his first of many hits, reaching number 11 on the US pop charts.
I Wanna Be Your Lover was a great song, and it combined two strengths. One was the vocal range, and he was highlighting the falsetto in a way that we'd recently lost when Smokey Robinson stopped having regular hits. So we needed another falsetto or male soprano voice in the chart. But also, he had the funk. He had the funk like the 70s funksters, like George Clinton and Funkadelic and the people from James Brown's group. So he combined those elements.
I Wanna Be Your Lover was just one of the songs we cut. But it had a great rhythm feel, and the tempo was right. And so I knew it was going to be a little bit of a rocker, and of course I was into that, and still am. We just created it along with the rest of them, and it really didn't come together until we put the drums on the track. He just basically came in and started playing with this pocket, and we call them pockets, you know, like it's, you know, you set a drum feel, you know, like with a drum machine, they're kind of hard to play to anyway because they're usually right on the meter. But he basically made that change, you know, in your mind as you heard him play. He was very laid back and very synchronous to a strict meter. I thought that was really impressive that he could do that at that age and rock it like that, you know, and he did. You know, being able to basically fit himself into that track, knowing exactly what would come up, what, where, and he had the arrangement in his head as well. So to me, I thought that was probably the deepest part of his musical ability was to be able to do that and do it so well.
Everything he did had groove. I mean, you could tell a Prince piece when you heard it. The timing, he had signature timing licks, but it was those types of hooks and licks rhythmically that made a huge difference.
There was no question in my mind that would have been the single, and it was.
Several years ago, this man made, when he was a teenager, a demonstration record, made a couple of them. Hello. And people offered to buy them, to put them out, and he said no. Why would he turn anybody down? You'll find out in a minute. And it certainly paid off. This is a fantastically successful album. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Prince.
You know, I was wondering, you know, if you could keep on, because the force, it's got a lot of power, and it makes me feel like it makes me feel like
4 singles in the top 10 in Billboard, not counting it being #1 on R&B radio stations. It had never been done before. Pop radio stations didn't want to play Off the Wall in the beginning. Michael Jackson is a viable artist all by himself, and if they gave him the opportunity, he could win the radio stations over. And he did.
The music industry is still very segregated at the time, and Michael was only nominated for R&B awards.
The nominees for Favorite Soul Album are Midnight Magic, The Commodores. All right, Off the Wall by Michael Jackson. And Teddy by Teddy Pendergrass.
Baby, I got so much love to give.
And the winner is, you got the info? There it is, sorry about that. Off the Wall, Michael Jackson.
This is wonderful. Thank you again to everybody. I'm really happy. Thank you, Quincy, and thank you for all the promotion people, including Fred D-Man, and the wonderful fans and disc jockeys. Thank you so much.
All right.
He thought it wasn't fair. He thought they snubbed him. It wasn't fair.
He came in and he told me, he said, Mother, next year they're going to have to give it to me.
Surprise, I can't help but see you running often through my mind, helpless like a baby, since your disguise.
Well, Off the Wall was a liberation professionally and personally, no doubt about that. This was a real work of art. Michael's involvement was total in this project. He had final say in everything, even though Quincy was producing it. Michael really felt that this was his baby. He was very unhappy about the fact that it didn't sell as many copies as he wanted it to sell, but it did launch Michael Jackson and make people look at him as something more than the little kid in front of the Jackson 5.
In concert, the electrifying Jackson, starring Michael Jackson. Don't miss the Jackson, starring the incredible Michael Jackson. America's hottest performers, summer's hottest tickets.
The Jacksons live with Stacey Lattisaw this Tuesday and Wednesday, August 18th and 19th at Madison Square Garden. Tickets now at the Garden Box Office and Ticketron, a Frankie Crocker and Ron Delsner presentation.
I had read somewhere that in the 80s you dated Prince. Is that true?
No,
No.
that's not true. Prince did like me. Yes, he did. But I didn't date him. We've gone roller skating, but not just with me, but I think Kathy Hilton was there, my brother Michael was there, my sister was there. So it was like a group. So no, I didn't date him, no. Actually, I went with my brother, my sister, and Kathy. We all went together, and Prince was there. We met there. That was my first time meeting him, but we all met up together. I think it was like that.
Was that here in LA?
Yeah, of course. It was in the Valley, yeah.
I'm in love with Mary Jane. She's my main thing. She makes me feel alright. She makes my heart sing. And when I'm feeling low, she comes as no surprise. Turns me on with her love. Takes me to paradise.
It was shocking, you know. I've always been a fan of rock, and usually that kind of stuff is reserved for the rockers, David Bowie or Alice Cooper, people like that. And, Prince was pressing the envelope like that,
The 80s was a time of great sexual ambiguity. We're talking about an era after the sexual revolutions happened. There's a gay revolution going on. There's a whole sense of freedom in how you dress and how you move. Where Michael developed a kind of childlike boyishness. His general perception was he was childlike and innocent and open. Prince, conversely, was, clearly sexual, but ambiguously sexual. So there was a very feminine sexuality that he cultivated.
Well, Prince chose a diverse group of people because he really believed that that was imperative for his vision, for what he was trying to achieve musically and visually and everything else. And again, because he also believed in sort of mixing musical influences, that it was important to mix ethnic backgrounds and cultural backgrounds as well.
His main purpose was so he wasn't stuck in one genre. He wanted to be able to cross over and cross racial barriers.
Music has no color, and it shouldn't have color. And I don't believe in that. What I do, I don't want it labeled black or white. I want it labeled, it's music.
We recorded some songs. He was already recording Dirty Mind, and we worked on Party Up and Head. In the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of race riots and war protests against Vietnam and civil rights, and so I was already very aware, and so it was kind of cool to fall into somebody who had this other cause that ended up sort of carrying that mentality on.
On Dirty Mind, the track and the album, Prince presented a more overtly sexual persona and a more original sound. And although it found little favour with the public, the music press were quick to identify the emergence of an increasingly unique and challenging artist.
Regarding the song Dirty Mind, and really, in making that comment, I have to say it in context with the whole album, it was not a huge hit, but it was the sort of tipping point in terms of this huge critical response, this tidal wave of critical acclaim coming his way. At a time when the record company, understandably, was very nervous about this sudden change. We signed Stevie Wonder, and now we've got, Rick Ocasek or something here. What happened? So that song, I think, was, again, it represented a significant tipping point in terms of Rolling Stone coming out with this glow-in-the-dark review and so on. And that was one of the things that enabled him to kind of continue on toward the commercial success. think that Prince really felt when Dirty Mind was complete that it was his most honest record to date and the one that most represented what he was really out to accomplish when he started the record. He really believed in that record, and he really believed that that was who he was and that was where he wanted to go and that was his future, and he was right.
I think maybe 1981, we opened for the Rolling Stones at the LA Coliseum. A huge, 90,000 people, or, like just a sea of people. And we were booed off the stage. People threw things at us. They were flipping us the bird. They were, faggot, the N-word, just every most horrible thing. Prince turned around and ran off the stage. He was so freaked out and hurt. He went back to his hotel. I think he even flew back to Minneapolis that night. That was an amazing experience I'll never forget.
For a world that needs to rock together, let the Jacksons light the way. Triumph, featuring the hit singles Lovely One and Heartbreak Hotel on Epic Records and Tapes.
Days of spinning and shaking rounds. I want my life so fancy free. And love that I can do it, I have to let me be. And I've had enough, and I know what's right for me. Hey, I've done my time and I have paid the price.
In October 1981, the follow-up to Dirty Mind, Controversy, was released. The sales were again disappointing.
So just cool. Honey, baby, can't you see? Cause you're so fine. 777-93-11. I wanna spend the night with you if that's alright.
I mean, how can I sum it up to say what it was like working for Prince? It was hell working for Prince. But we were like, it was a lot of pressure. It was just a lot of pressure. You couldn't wear certain things. You couldn't do certain things. You couldn't, if you did a dance that he didn't like, or a dance that the audience dug, he didn't particularly like that, because he would stop us from doing certain dances, from wearing certain clothes, because there was no, he just never wanted there to be any room to upstage him.
Yo, baby, where you going in such a hurry? You ain't taking any limo? Baby, you look good to me. What's the matter, baby?
My dad and we got in a fight because he doesn't want me to move out.
Yeah, he just don't want you to be giving up that body language.
It was with the release of the first single for his fifth album, however, that Prince finally broke into the mainstream. 1999 exploded onto the charts in September 1982, and over time it would become regarded as one of the key singles of the decade.
Say 2000, party over, oops, out of time.
In the 80s, radio had really become stratified. Album-oriented rock was considered white rock. They played Hendrix. If you wanted to sell albums to the album audience, which is where the real money was, you needed to be on some of these stations. You know, Prince made hit singles, but he also made albums in a way that were really artistic. And Prince was so productive that he was coming with these albums every time, and every album was a leap forward. He basically forced radio stations to come to him because the audience expanded with every record, and the tours expanded.
Go let the window fast. Lady,
single by Prince was our pick hit of the week. Not only did the song go on to become a major smash, but it also helped to establish this performer as one of pop and R&B's most creative stars. He's with us tonight to sing his monster hit, Little Red Corvette. Here's Prince.
I should know by the way you popped your car sideways that it wouldn't last. You're the kind of person that believes in making out once, love them and leave them fast.
So gradually you could see that mainstream America was beginning to pick up on this artist who up until then had basically been a cult hero with an audience that was half artsy, cutting edge, and half R&B.
So, you know, if you listen to Little Red Corvette, you know, certainly if you listen to 1999, you know, you just kind of hear that, you know, big, bright sound of the 1980s. You know, he was one of the guys who defined it.
There were dimensions to his writing that were beginning to reveal themselves that I don't think had been there before. The songs were a little more sophisticated, not just lyrically, but musically. I mean, when you think of Little Red Corvette, it's just a classic pop song.
There were two elements, I think, that in the early days became very synonymous with this sound. One of them is the Oberheim 8-voice analog synthesizer, which was used in the same way that horns were used on Earth, Wind and Fire records or Parliament Funkadelic records. The other, a little bit later on, was the Lindrum, the drum machine. And honestly, I think part of it was the sound of it, but another part of it was for him, as someone who had always been a one-man band, and even in working with people, it was very important for the band to execute the sounds that he had in his head, to execute that original moment of creativity where he inspirationally heard that sound in his head. The drum machine would do exactly what he told it to do. And for a lot of us in that era, that was like a revelation. Wow, I can actually program this machine and it will play exactly what I want it to. Whereas if I try to explain to a drummer what it is I'm trying to do, he's probably going to play my idea his way, and it's not going to be the same thing.
The 1999 LP was the biggest selling record that Prince had so far released, and by the close of 1983, it had sold over 1 million copies in the US alone.
The 1999 album was the seismic shift where all of the things that were attempted, all of the things that were pointed toward through the records that preceded it came together in this sort of perfect storm. And the sudden magic formula for being edgy and being on the bleeding edge, but at the same time being commercial and having huge radio hits, all came together at the same time.
1999 is an album that was made for 80s radio. You know, I mean, I think if you go back and listen to Dirty Mind, for example, you know, those songs really sound strange. There's so much space in them. You know, there's a kind of emptiness that's really intriguing in them, but they're not big radio songs. The songs on 1999 are perfect for radio. There's something going on all the time. You know, Prince had learned a lot as a producer, learned a lot as so he could shape his own music, and I think understood what it would take to bring him a bigger audience.
I'd like to ask you something.
We've got
you know, all right. It occurred to me, having watched MTV over the last few months, that it's a solid enterprise and it's got a lot going for it. I'm just floored by the fact that there's so few black artists featured on it. Why is that?
I think that we're trying to move in that direction. We want to play artists that seem to be doing music that fits into what we want to play for MTV. The company is thinking in terms of narrow casting.